I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good afternoon. For those of you that don't know me, my name is School Resource Officer Chad Hochstatter. I've also been known as Sergeant Hochstatter while serving 2 tours of duty in Iraq as a member of the United States Marine Corps. I would like to welcome you to the Mendota High School Veterans Day Assembly. I would like to welcome you to the Mendota High School Veterans Day Assembly. As a veteran, I take great personal pride in this day. I hope to share that pride with all of you. It's been an honor to watch the staff and students work collaboratively to develop this project, and I hope that you will enjoy it as much as I will. At this time, I would like to ask all the veterans in the audience to please stand up to be recognized by our students.
100th anniversary of the first celebration of Armistice Day, which served the purpose of celebrating the veterans who fought for our country in World War I. This day originated as Armistice Day, and in 1938 became a nationally observed holiday called Veterans Day. Veterans and families devote their lives to serve our country and make sacrifices that are incomparable. It is important to honor all of these heroes for what they have sacrificed, and we have been doing so since November 11th, 1919. Initially, Armistice Day was a celebration of only World War I veterans. It was held on this day to commemorate that in 1918, the Allies and Central Powers of World War I called a ceasefire on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. President Eisenhower changed the holiday to Veterans Day in 1954 so that Americans would recognize all veterans, living or not, from all worlds. Veterans Day was not always celebrated on November 11th, though. In 1968, Congress decided to move Veterans Day to the 4th Monday of October. When Veterans Day was celebrated on the 4th Monday, people felt it did not have the same significance as it once had on November 11th, which has a deeper meaning for veterans due to it to being the anniversary of World War I armistice. In 1975, Congress officially changed the observation back to November 11th and has been celebrated on this day ever since. As time has passed and the number of wars the United States has fought has grown, Veterans Day continues to have the significance to our country. There are 18.8 million veterans currently in the United States, roughly 7.6% of the population. That only counts the veterans still living. A much greater number have served and since passed away. Veterans Day gives all those Americans the celebration that they deserve. Every community has its own way of recognizing veterans. Veterans Park in Mendota contains many plaques and monuments dedicated to local veterans who have fought in previous wars. A memorial in the park contains bricks of names of local veterans. Next to the bricks lies a memorial to 2 Congressional Medal of Honor recipients, Corporal James W. Larrabee and First Lieutenant Thomas H. L. Payne. Both men were awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for actions taken in the U.S. Civil War. Both men enlisted in Mendota. There's a monument that contains the names of veterans from different wars who were honored and mourned. Benches dedicated to local veterans and are constant reminders of those who have given so much to preserve the community where we live. The description on one of the benches says, "Dedicated to all that has served. Donated by the VFW, Post Auxiliary 4079, thank you." Another bench contains a plaque of honor fallen soldiers that reads, "In loving memory, George Buki, World War II, Dale Denkus, Korea Claude, Oily Pearson, World War II, Lester Spennard, World War II, the families." There are also flagpoles and a gazebo, which are dedicated to local veterans as well. The plaque under the flagpole reads, "Flagpoles dedicated to Congressional Medal of Honor recipient, James W. Larrabee, by Charles and Lusoff Waldock. Past commanders and Archie Spender, American Legion Post 540, by his daughters, Ruth Mason and Mary Grace Harkness. The State of Illinois, by American Legion Post 540, all present service personnel, by the citizens of Mendota. The City of Mendota, by the City of Mendota. Veterans of all foreign wars, by Mendota VFW Post 4079. All Mendota area veterans, by the Union Bank of Mendota. The plaque by the gazebo states, "This gazebo is dedicated in honor of all veterans," by Dr. and Mrs. Elliott Falk and the citizens of Mendota. A cannon from the Civil War sits among other memorials. The plaque for this cannon reads, "Civil War Cannon, U.S. Army Sage, and Garrison Parrott Rifle, manufactured by West Point Foundry, Cold Springs, New York. Serial number 324, manufactured in 1864. Weighed 4,240 pounds. Usually mounted on a sage and garrison carriage. Fired a 30-pound projectile, diameter 4.2 inches, one of the first rifled cannons. The restoration and placement of this cannon was made possible by American Legion Post 540s and employees of the City of Mendota. Our local park is filled with memorials to our veterans. Many of us pass them every day and do not recognize the significance of the events and the sacrifices that led to our park holding such history. The next time you walk through the park, take a moment to view one or more of these tributes and make sure we honor our veterans more than one day a year.
In a war-stricken landscape, blood-stained by tragedy, a lone soldier lifted a discarded scrap of paper and read what has now become one of the most prominent remembrances of World War I. After turning this paper into several of London's biggest magazines, the poem has spread worldwide. While it has touched the hearts of millions, its fame has remained unknown to the author. Canadian military doctor John McCrae spent several years experiencing the injury and death that was inflicted upon the Allies during World War I. The death that impacted him the most and prompted him to begin expressing the horrors of war on paper was that of his close friend Alexis Helmer. Helmer was brutally killed by a shell belonging to the Germans during the Battle of Ypres in 1915. McCrae saved a lot of lives as a doctor during the war, but he couldn't save his friend, so he wrote a poem to memorialize him. The fame of this poem has reached far and wide, considering it was intended to be thrown away by the author. Unfortunately, John McCrae was not able to see his success, since he too died before it became popular. McCrae was inspired to write this poem when he saw a group of red poppies sprouting in Flanders Field, the battlefield that held the Second Battle of Ypres, where his friend had been killed. It was written from the point of view of the soldiers that had valiantly died there during the war. The words of this poem focus on displaying the feelings of the fallen soldiers who were laid to rest in Flanders Fields. John McCrae described the battlefield as a cemetery for the people whose deaths were so overlooked in the midst of war. He created the impression that the men and women who gave their lives for war needed to be recognized and remembered. The poppies mentioned in the poem have since become the symbol of remembrance for these fallen soldiers and are used in many Veterans Day celebrations worldwide. Poppies were planted in cemeteries after the war and sold to raise money for the war effort. The poppy remains an item passed out and worn by veterans and those wishing to honor veterans on this day. John McCrae showed that a person's life can end unexpectedly, especially in battle. The poem In Flanders Fields gives the message that everyone should enjoy the time that they have on earth and celebrate the small things, even if it is just a group of red flowers growing in an open field. In Flanders Fields by John McCrae. In Flanders Fields the poppies blow, between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place. And in the sky, the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
Through long days of fighting an enemy, soldiers became exhausted. When soldiers have felt nothing but the day after day despair of war, sometimes the only thing that gave them a sense of relief was the United Service Organization. As soldiers gathered around, their mood was lifted for a brief period as they listened to the comedians performing and the upbeat music being played. These scared troops felt at home, for the camp shows were the only way the soldiers could temporarily tune out the thoughts of war. In 1941, the non-profit USO show was created. President Franklin D. Roosevelt created the organization with the sole intention of using it to increase the morale among its troops in the midst of war. This organization helped make many military soldiers around the globe feel at home while on active duty. USO operates centers at or near military installation zones, in places too dangerous for anyone but combat troops to occupy. Public donations and donations from corporations and organizations help fund these shows that happen to have over 200 locations worldwide. The slogan for these shows was, "Until everyone comes home." This is a reference to the meaning behind these shows, that were an outlet of escape or home away from home for these deranged soldiers. Until these soldiers come home and can finally be at ease with their family or friends, they can enjoy a brief feeling of what they miss back home. The USO brought home to these soldiers in the form of pop culture they knew and loved. To illustrate, the USO show put on a spectacular show and shows the movies for the active soldiers. Free services such as food and childcare were provided. Although the shows weren't earning profits, the organization continued to host multiple shows in the hopes of helping our troops. During the midst of war, many soldiers came to USO shows for the lighthearted entertainment. It gave them a sense of home with upbeat music and warm faces. Laughter filled the air as comedians delivered routines to a unique audience. Beautiful melodies were sung as world-famous bands traveled to these bases to perform. Bob Hope, Marilyn Monroe, and the Andrews Sisters were some big celebrities who have performed at these shows. These wonderful performers got to travel to any of the 200 locations worldwide where USO shows were held. Their payment, $50 per show, and the appreciation of an audience they could only find through the USO. The show would open during the evening and would immediately be lit with the energy of the performers and the crowd. One of those celebrities who never failed to lift the soldiers' spirits was Bob Hope. Bob Hope was a stand-up comedian who performed in front of the soldiers at USO shows. He quickly became synonymous with the USO, performing his shows during World War II. His first USO show started on May 6, 1941 in California. He then continued to support future USO shows in the following wars, performing 57 tours through World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Beirut, and the First Gulf War, among others. Hope's last tour was in 1991. The U.S. Congress recognized Bob Hope's service and in 1997 declared Hope an honorary veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces. Mr. Hope's act consisted of learning the officers' names and their lives to poke fun at them, which made him and the others feel a connection. He would dance around, tell jokes, and even sing to those around him, creating a positive aura wherever he appeared. He received many letters of positivity. On one occasion, he was told of a platoon missing one of his shows and their feelings of disappointment. Mr. Hope later found the platoon and performed a half-hour show in their honor. As a token for his consistent efforts toward giving the troops some relief from the stress of battle, Mr. Hope was given the Sylvanus Thayer Award. This is an award given once every year to a citizen who expresses the motto of duty, honor, country. Bob Hope gave up the chance to spend many Christmas holidays with his family, often opting to tour where our soldiers could not be with their own families. We want to take a moment to share with you a short clip of Bob Hope's 1972 Christmas Day show in Vietnam.
Ambassador at Airbase, Saigon. There's lots of VIPs in our audience today, including Ambassador to Vietnam, Ellsworth Bunker. If he laughs, we get our passports back. And here's his lovely wife, the Ambassador to Nepal, Carol Lace Bunker. And he's a very good friend, the fellow who runs the store, 4-star General Fred Wyatt.
Well, come on, let's welcome Bob Holt.
Southeast Asia's biggest rocket base. It is mostly incoming. Rockets here. I played golf this morning. When we started out, it was an 18-hole course. When we finished, it was a 54-hole course. Now, Tom Sanudo is the busiest airport in the world. You usually have to stay in the holding pattern for hours, but I came right on in. That Henry Kissinger impersonation works every time. Great to see you. Here we are, Christmas Eve in Saigon for the trimming. This is my 9th trip to Vietnam and my last. It has to be. The chicken with my blood type died. It's such a friendly city. I'll never forget the time a total stranger walked up to me and handed me a grenade. Are those ours? They're bringing my laundry in. It's hard to believe this is the last time we've been playing this bass, and this is the last time you out there in the audience will be seeing us here. Try not to cry, huh? We figured it would be all over when we got here this time, but no luck. Not only did they fail to reach an agreement in Paris, but now they're fighting over the hotel bill.
Although USO shows have evolved over the years, modern shows still contain the same profound purpose as before. Officer Hochstatter, a former U.S. Marine, shared his own experience of the USO shows he attended in the early 2000s. Upon arriving at the USO show in the morning, Mr. Hochstatter was in awe of the idea of meeting famous celebrities. The USO show took place in a huge tent with large tables and seats, as people were teeming around every corner hoping to meet famous idols. Although it wasn't the typical grand performance of the Bob Hope shows, athletes, rappers, and even wrestling stars were present, as they provided autographs and pictures to the troops. One particular memory of Mr. Hochstatter's experience was getting an autograph of the Arizona Cardinals' Larry Fitzgerald, and even having lunch with a few of the stars. Despite the fact that the USO show had only lasted for an hour or two, Mr. Hochstatter states how much of a profound impact these shows had made for him. The USO remains an active organization. Last year, 96 celebrities visited 19 countries, over 41 tours to deliver shows to 87,000 troops. It remains an important way for the entertainment industry and Americans to recognize our troops.
Art is always a risk. You never know how an audience is going to respond to art until they do. MHS art teacher Brock Songrath and MHS social sciences chair Jason Artman adopted that attitude and accepted that risk 6 weeks ago when they began a collaborative project that is going to be unveiled shortly. Mr. Songrath and Mr. Artman are the creators behind the project, including coming up with the idea, preparing the pieces of plywood for students to paint, and, with the help of MHS Industrial Arts teachers Keith Raley and Matt Meyer, assembling 100 pieces to construct the project. For 6 weeks, these teachers have awaited the reaction to a piece of art they did not paint. The project, which Mr. Songrath's 100 art students created for today's Veterans Day ceremony, is a collaborative blind mosaic, a term Mr. Artman coined to describe a piece of art created by a group of artists none of whom have ever seen the complete image. This project was created to involve all art students on a single piece, despite the fact that they have varying degrees of skill in the field of art. The students were each given an image containing only 1% of the finished product. Mr. Songrath gave each student a 4-inch by 4-inch wooden square, upon which they would recreate a small section of the mosaic. The teachers are not the only people awaiting the audience's reaction. Mrs. Aughenbaugh, who approved the concept and the purchase of supplies, chose not to view the original image in order to first see the finished product when it is unveiled shortly. The first step Mr. Songrath took was designing the piece. He was influenced by the works of Nicole Schattenstein and James Montgomery Flagg. Mr. Artman and Mr. Songrath titled the piece Unity to symbolize both the efforts of many art students coming together to create the piece and the efforts of millions of American veterans who have shared a purpose in defending the country. When designing the piece, Mr. Songrath brought together many techniques such as blending, highlighting, and shadowing. But he said the hardest part for students would be making the art look realistic while trying to exactly reproduce their individual image and not trying to think about what they were drawing, so each individual piece corresponds with the whole. If the students tried to figure out what it was that they were drawing, they would draw and paint what they saw rather than the real picture and change the outcome. The teachers had to label each piece of wood with a coordinate system and assigned pieces to students in a random order so no student could put the pieces together. Along with their wooden square, the artists were given a PDF file created by Mr. Songrath with a picture of the individual piece to recreate. On October 4th, the students began their part in the project by sketching each section onto the wood. Once the students finished the sketching and painting aspects using acrylic paint, the teachers put the squares on a much larger piece of wood and framed it to complete the mosaic. After this piece is revealed and used for this Veterans Day ceremony, Mr. Songrath is hoping to take it on a tour around to other interested groups. The teachers are working with the Arts of Starved Rock Country Fund to place the artwork in front of a larger audience. Eventually, the teachers plan to auction the art and donate proceeds to a veterans charity.
Salute to America's finest. Since Mendota has a rich history of those with military service, we would like to show our gratitude by recognizing all of our area servicemen and women. If you or a family member has served or is currently serving, please stand and remain standing through the duration of your branch's song. I will announce the songs as they are played.
The over 200 students in this room who helped to create this program today. We cannot thank you enough. It was absolutely amazing. So let's hear it for all of the students who worked so hard. And as you heard, there were several teachers who collaborated to make this happen today. We'd again like to thank Mr. Sangra, who orchestrated over 100 art students for the amazing piece of art that we have today. Mr. Artman and Mr. Beck, they worked with the U.S. History Honors and American Lit 3 Honors classes. Mr. Kyle Amati and Mrs. Lori Schrock, who directed the band today. Mr. Scott Siri, who organized the technology. Mr. Meyer and Mr. Rayleigh, who helped out with the creation of the stands. The MHS custodial staff and Mr. Andy Knowlton, and all of you for showing such great attention and respect today.